Good evening. Multiple sclerosis is a painful and frustrating disease which causes a progressive deterioration of the nervous system. Tonight, Towards 2000 looks at a controversial, but to many an apparently effective means of obtaining relief from the symptoms of MS. From the United States, we take the night ride to the stars on board an airborne observatory. From India, we look at water hyacinth, that prolifically growing weed which causes havoc to the waterways and is now being put to good use. And an anti-missile naval defence system, reputedly the best in the world, has been developed in South Australia. And technology has finally come to that hitherto untouched edifice, the outback dunny. They're the reports on Towards 2000 tonight.
Tonight we're going to take a night ride to the stars on board the Kuiper Airborne Observatory. Basically a conventional telescope mounted on board a star lifter. We'll be flying for about 6.5 hours of altitudes of about 45,000 feet. That'll put us about above 90% of the Earth's water vapor, which would typically shield ground-based astronomers from infrared radiation coming from the edges of the universe. Scientists on board the Kuiper have already peered into the mysterious birthplace of stars. They've charted quasars and black holes. The telescope, which is mounted just forward of the port wing, is that sensitive that it could detect a lighted match on our moon. I've got to go, we're already running late.
To achieve these astronomical feats, a cluster of 3 telescopes are used. 2 smaller cameras with a wider field of view and the main 91-centimetre mirror. The telescopes are housed in this recessed section, open to the elements during observations. Resonance and turbulence caused by airflow is smoothed by special spoilers on the airframe. The Kuiper Airborne Observatory is probably the most expensive telescope in the world to run. Tonight's mission will cost around $50,000, and the aircraft flies about 80 missions per year. But since the aircraft began flying in 1974, scientists have competed openly for the chance of a ride, to watch cosmic events they could never hope to see from the ground. But it's the thin and stable air of the troposphere that makes the Kuiper such a valuable viewing platform. Nearly every object in the cosmos gives off thermal radiation in the form of infrared rays, but clouds and water vapor diffuse and swamp them before they ever reach ground-based telescopes. Up here on the Spartan control deck, a whole generation of infrared astronomers have cut their teeth. They've made some spectacular discoveries. While flying over Australia, they sensed the rings around Uranus. They've logged the speed of stars at 600 kilometres a second. They've charted extremely powerful infrared sources in distant galaxies, generating heat at 100 billion times that of our sun. But by the time the radiation has travelled across the eons of space, it's infinitesimally weak. Still, the primary telescope is able to focus and amplify it to something measurable. Tonight's first leg will focus on the nearby Orion constellation to help calibrate the instruments.
This is the receiving or focal plane of the primary telescopes and the secondary tracker telescopes. The telescope itself is behind that bulkhead, open to the atmosphere. Outside it's about minus 50 degrees. The telescope appears to be moving, but in fact it's the plane moving around the telescope. A very complex series of gyros and stabilizers and an air bearing is keeping it absolutely steady on the Orion constellation. Out of this fiber optic cluster comes the faint heat registration of what could be the birth cry of a galaxy. The signal goes down into helium canisters that are at minus 273 degrees, almost absolute zero. And that shields the faint infrared radiation from being masked by the radiation that's occurring here on the flight deck.
The telescope remains accurate to within fractions of 1 degree, only marginally less than a ground-based installation. But even with that precision, it's sometimes quite difficult to first find the target star and then lock on the inertial guidance system.
Okay, you on track? Yeah. Okay, bring it in. Good. Okay. Up a little bit.
Now the foresight's good, isn't it?
Okay.
So go back, tweak back, see a little more. Okay, right there. Now.
It's an awfully big galaxy out there, and tonight's mission, or at least one of the mission legs, is to hone in on a small guide star in the middle of the Orion constellation. Now that's something like 2 billion light years away. And since the primary telescope only has a 1 degree field of vision, they have to use 2 smaller telescopes, an acquisition and a tracking telescope, to first get the area of the sky and then hone in on it with the acquisition camera. Now once the acquisition camera is locked on, the computer updates information on the star's position to the autopilot of the aircraft. So once it's locked on, the telescope is virtually flying the aircraft.
As the Starlifter roars on, the galactic video game continues. And then the target star looms like a ball on the video monitor. The inertial guidance system is engaged, and banks of computers start logging data on the thermal profile of the star. The astronomers will later be able to interpret the data to detect hydrogen, sulfuric acid and carbon, some of the chemical building blocks of the universe. The Kuiper's flights will take the astronomers around the world in the next few years in search of mysterious and violent cosmic events. The birth of supernova, the reign of red giants and white dwarfs. And each flight will tell them more about where we came from and perhaps where we will go in the future.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
Good morning. Hi. It's a great day for a drive. Top of the weekend.
Nah, just the usual. Drop the kids off at netball, pick up number 1 son from the footy. Fill her up, thanks.
No problem. Looks like you're low on oil and overdue for a service.
Okay. Can you take care of it?
Sure. Well, there you go. It's all okay.
Thanks a lot. See ya.
Have a good day.
Hello and welcome to Micro Live. Today we're joined by Shirley Williams, who's made a special study of the effects of computers on jobs. We'll be hearing her views later in the programme.
We'll also be looking at some of the technical problems holding up the IT revolution, and I'll be guided around one man's view of the office of the future.
But first, let's look at some of the predictions made over the last 30 years of what computers would do to our working lives.
Well, it was something completely different to what I imagined, because I couldn't really imagine anything. I'd never heard of a computer or seen a computer or knew anything about it. When I first walked in here, it was rather bewildering because everything was so modern.
Since they were introduced into business in the 1950s, computers have created a mixture of fear and fascination. Although crude and unreliable, early machines like Leo helped companies to automate both their payrolls and their internal accounting. Jobs appeared in the new world of data processing, with its own band of high priests and acolytes who fed and maintained the machines. Big companies were able to expand as computer automation brought greater efficiency and savings. But some of the savings were in paper shuffling jobs like these, which computers had now made unnecessary. Endless rooms full of people processing data by hand simply weren't needed anymore. Business was quick to start using computers for accounting, but British industry's take-up of computers for automating production was lamentably slow.
How fast do you see these processes coming into industry?
Well, not as fast as I would like. Of course, they've been coming ever since mechanisms and power was first used by men. They're coming, inevitably, I think, at an accelerating rate. The speed at which they come will, in fact, determine the speed at which we improve our standard of living.
Inertia by management was matched by real fear of jobs being de-skilled by the machines. For instance, British Steel at Rotherham installed a computer to control the furnaces.
We asked 2 of the senior melters if they thought there was as much satisfaction in the job now that a computer was taking a share in it.
No, I don't think there is.
I should think it's like automatic pilot on an aeroplane. If he just sits back and lets it have a go, I don't know there's any more satisfaction in that, is there?
I think you like to think that you're in charge of a thing and that at the end of it you've achieved something.
At a time of full employment, a debate was beginning about the long-term effects of automation. In 1966, it reached television.
2 main points of view emerge. In the simplest possible terms, one is optimistic and the other pessimistic. Now, the optimists think that in a situation of nearly full employment, which is what we have at the moment, when you move automation into an industry, you release workers who are so badly needed that they enable other industries to expand and start producing goods which raise the general level of prosperity. The pessimists, on the other hand, fear that a situation could arise in which workers displaced by automation from one industry fail to find jobs because all the other industries are doing the same thing, installing machines and turning out the men. The result will be chronic, wide-scale, even lifelong unemployment for millions.
We could have something like 1 in 8 out of work in the early 1970s because of automation, if we sat back and did absolutely nothing. This is about sort of 3 million, and this represents, if you like, a kind of rate of redundancy of between 200,000 and 300,000.
In the 70s, a new factor appeared, the silicon chip. By drastically cutting computing costs in half each year, it now made personal computing possible. Long before the IBM personal computer appeared, word processors and personal micros were signaling change. Pundits began to predict that computers would affect whole new areas of office work, destroying jobs in the hitherto protected service sector. In the late 70s, even in Germany, the unions were calling the silicon chip the job killer. In Britain, white-collar unions like ASTMS were clearly very worried, as their public campaign showed.
Overall, it must mean a diminishing of the number of jobs available, not only in the UK, but in every industrialized country, in Europe, in the United States, absolutely everywhere. It will also go on over a considerable time period. This diminishing will go on perhaps over 20, 30, maybe even up to 50 years.
Well, all that was said before the recession. Now we have well over 3 million unemployed. Shirley, to what extent do you put that down to this new technology?
Well, we have got 3 million unemployed, and it would be a great mistake to put it down to the chip or any other part of the new technology. Because the truth of the matter is that probably about 65,000 jobs in the last 5 years have been lost because of new technology, and over 1 million have been lost because of the decline of traditional manufacturing. What really happens is that in the processes, when microelectronics comes into processes, you lose jobs. Take printing, where we've lost a great many jobs in the traditional Fleet Street graphics. On the other hand, new products which have got microelectronics in them, create jobs. Look at the Japanese with a video recorder with the very large chip and so forth. So what you get is a balance between the two. The trouble with Britain is that we brought a lot of microelectronics into the processes and lost jobs, but we haven't been very innovative in bringing them into the products and creating jobs.
When we were filming a series on robotics in the United States, we saw a most extraordinary factory there that was actually making robot bears that would sing and act the part in a chain of pizza parlors. And you can see now this is Billy Bob Broccoli, and it's a sort of piece of industry. It's a huge factory, is that it was inconceivable that could exist without new technology, and nobody could have forecast that it would happen. It's really quite intriguing, because Not only does it provide work for people to actually make the bears, but also to maintain them and to provide the music for them to sing in these great big chain of pizza
Absolutely, it's an awful new industry, but it has created jobs.
What else do you see as creating new jobs?
One of the areas that has grown very rapidly is the professional area and technical area. For example, in the United States, about 500,000 new jobs have been created for technicians in information technology, another 300,000 for computer specialists, and many, many more related to robotics and so forth. I think that that's going to be the great growth area, and the great dropping area is going to be, not yet, because it's been very slow, the clerical area. I think the clerical area will probably drop by many hundreds of thousands in the next 5 or 6 years, but it's all much slower than that film we saw indicates. There are still people doing shorthand typing in our offices even today.
We haven't seen this great big loss of jobs at all in Japan and the United States that we've seen here. Thank you very much, Shirley. Fred?
Well, maybe we haven't really seen the major effects of the micro-revolution yet. The people who predicted that it would sweep through offices like a plague have, to a large extent, been proved wrong. In most offices in Britain, we've been very slow to introduce automation. Or perhaps the technology is too expensive, or perhaps it's simply not good enough yet, not easy enough to use.
Well, the pundits have always predicted that as mainframes, micros and telephone networks gradually interlinked, there would be an explosion of the new technology by those people who aren't skilled in the use of computers, executives, managers, doctors, lawyers and so on. But one of the things that's holding this up is
incompatibility.
You're watching Sleepcore, media for insomnia.
Disney World, the Kennedy Space Center, Universal Studios, the Epcot Center. Orlando, Florida is a tourist town from city limit to city limit. More Americans head here for holidays than anywhere else in the country. And being the country's #1 tourist destination, it follows that a good percentage of the people on the roads at any moment haven't a clue where they are or where they're going. And that makes this an ideal testing ground for a car navigation system that can guide you across 16,000 kilometres and through 75,000 intersections just as easily as you'd find your way around your own hometown. It can also help you find a room for the night or select a tourist attraction, book a table at a restaurant, or even find your way to an old friend's house. If you still manage to get lost and can't quite remember how to use the system, there's a 24-hour help service available by phone. Now that's at the offices of the American Automobile Association, and that's where we're heading. So I need to enter my destination. It's a service. There it is, AAA offices in Florida. At Heathrow, that's right, and I'll ask it to plan a destination via the fastest route. Onboard navigation systems have been taking the long, slow road to fruition. But with this system, electronic navigation has finally come of age. It's simple to program, and following the turn-by-turn instructions is as easy as, well, getting lost in a strange city.
Drive straight through the intersection onto SR 436 Severin Boulevard. Next turn.
If that voice starts to nag you, turn it off and follow the map instead. As a first-time visitor to Orlando with no idea where AAA was in relation to anywhere, and with very little nose for direction, I was relying totally on that synthesized voice and the video map to get me there.
Bear right onto the ramp to east-west toll west.
Okay, so the East-West Expressway. TravTech continually calculates the distance and time remaining to your destination. With a quick glance at the monitor from time to time, you can't go wrong.
Bear right onto the ramp to east-west toll west.
And make a right.
Your car may be off the planned route. If so, press the OK new route button for a new route.
You're kidding. Bear right, not turn right. time for some help. To be fair, this mistake really wasn't Travtech's fault. It was the cameraman's. He was blocking the monitor, and because I was still getting used to this, I needed a quick look at the map just to be sure where I was going. When I couldn't remember what I'd been told to do after making a wrong turn, the help desk was on hand to solve the problem.
Good afternoon, Travtech Help Desk. This is Loretta.
Hello, Loretta. I'm trying to find my way from the airport to the AAA office. As it turned out, straying off course didn't present a problem.
You're eastbound on Lake Underhill.
The computer redetermined my position
Push OK
and planned a new course to get me going. Okay. Thanks, Loretta. Bye-bye. Travtech uses a combination of magnetic compasses and wheel sensors to pinpoint the car's position. The computer system matches that road information with navigable maps stored in its database. So, as I turn the corner, the wheel sensors note that I've turned right, figure there must be a street there, and the microprocessors scan the database to find the name of that street. Hopefully they'll tell me I'm on the East-West Expressway.
I think 10 years out, it's probably not unlikely to assume that you'll have this available in a whole host of cars that are available on the road. I think by that time, the price will come down to where it's affordable for the average American.
Throughout the journey, my car is constantly receiving information on updated traffic conditions from this control room. Freeway cameras, radio reports, road sensors that detect traffic volumes, police communications. They all filter back to this room where they're added to the database. The car and the control room are constantly talking through radio signals. The car advising its position and the control room keeping the vehicle informed of traffic problems. If there's a jam ahead, Travtech will think again and suggest a new direction I can take to avoid the congestion.
Traffic Management Center, this is Joe.
Hello, Joe. It's Tracy.
Hi, Tracy. I've been tracking you since you left the airport. I saw you make that wrong turn on the way.
Today, Joe was keeping an eagle eye on me. But in the future, he'll see thousands of cars moving across the city and through Travtech be able to direct traffic smoothly across town.
Traffic is congested.
We still have a ways ahead before onboard navigation systems become standard offering. The Travtech system is presently undergoing a 12-month trial.
Next turn in 1 2/10 miles.
I found it simple, clear, and not at all distracting.
Turn left onto AAA Drive.
And it got me exactly where I wanted to go. If it also proves capable of reducing congestion and keeping drivers cool under the collar,
route guidance complete.
It'll be the one backseat driver you'll gladly welcome aboard.
You are in the vicinity of your destination.
Honey, we're leaving in 10 minutes.
While virtual reality isn't quite here yet, the car is. The new Accord from Honda.
You're watching Sleepcore. Sleep tight.
Captain Power has come to TV, and you can be part of it. What are you doing? Aim the PowerJet XT7, fire invisible beams at the television targets, and score. Or be hit.
The TV show fires back.
No kidding. Captain Power versus Lord Dread.
I don't believe it.
Believe it, short human. The power of the future is in your hands. Believe it.
Captain Power jet and figure sold separately. Batteries not included.
If you've ever taken a flopper in a pool, you know it feels like hitting something hard. Every good diver knows you must hit the water right or it won't get out of your way. You must make your dive so as to cut the resistance. Just as a fish moves around without noticing the ocean, we live near the bottom of a great ocean of air. And although 100 times thinner than water, air has a force in motion that is enormous. Air offers a lot of resistance to anything going through it. However, nature makes it possible for birds to fly through the air at speeds that seem out of proportion to the size of their muscles. Science has found that this bird speed is a matter of shape as well as strength. The streamlines of birds make a little power go a long way. With this in mind, engineers study the resistance air offers to moving shapes. Since the earliest study of streamlines, wind tunnels have been used to find out what happens when an object goes through the air. A wind tunnel is simply a long tube with a fan or powerful blower at one end. A stream of air is blown through the tunnel at varying speeds. In some tunnels, up to 120 miles per hour. Small models are placed in the wind stream and the action of the air currents is observed. Whirls and eddies in the air currents around the models are studied. And the amount of resistance or drag is measured by sensitive instruments. In order to obtain a permanent record of resistance offered by various shapes, liquid is used instead of air, and its action recorded by a motion picture camera. The paddle wheel, powered by a motor, draws the liquid through this center passage and sends it around the outer passages. Slots are used to eliminate whirls at the turns and create an area of even flow. An object is placed in the liquid. Aluminum dust is added so that we can see clearly what happens to the current. Any form cuts through the liquid as it would through air. This shape is not streamlined. As the liquid strikes the front or leading edge, pressure is built up which causes resistance. Then, as it rolls off the rear, it is thrown into spins or eddies which create a suction behind the body. Regardless of shape, some resistance is unavoidable. As the liquid goes by the shape, its direction of flow is changed, and this change of direction wastes power. By rounding off the corners, this change of direction is made more gradual, so the amount of effort is decreased and resistance is cut down. Making the shape longer and thinner tends to cut down resistance. This decreases the violence of the eddies and reduces the suction in the rear. With an even thinner shape, the liquid flows more easily and there are fewer eddies at the rear. A streamlined shape with blunt nose and tapering rear eases a hole with the least resistance and brings the liquid together at the rear with the least disturbance. The ideal streamline follows a strict geometric design which engineers call the parabola. The length should be just about 3 times the greatest width. Such streamlining makes it easier for an object to get through the air by reducing wind resistance. The higher the speed, the more it helps. Any automobile traveling through the air meets the problem of wind resistance, so engineers set about applying the principles of streamlining to the automobile. And by rounding the contours and tapering the rear, have smoothed out the flow of air around the body of the modern motor car and smoothed out eddies at the rear. Of course, to a bird, cars today might seem already well streamlined. But as seen by a worm, the modern motor car is anything but streamlined. Yet the bottom of a motor car represents about 20% of the surface and sets up considerable wind resistance. The development of more complete streamlining for motor cars will be the problem of engineers of tomorrow. Someday, this problem will finally be solved. Sometime in the future, the completely streamlined torpedo car may come into use. Elevated highways, wide and level, may let us go 120 miles an hour. But such a torpedo car on our streets today would be entirely impractical. However, practical streamlining has been applied with success to the finest motor cars today, with many additional advantages. The streamlines of the new turret top give greater strength to the body of the car than the old box-like construction of yesterday. The slanting windshields and windows cut down glare from rear and sides and make safer driving. Streamlined fenders enclose the wheels more completely and help to keep the car clean. And they protect the wheels from force of strong winds, making the steering easier. Sloping rear panels allow for more tire and luggage space. These modern streamlines round out all details and absorb them into a good design with new beauty and dignity of appearance. This practical streamlining brings to the new automobile increased comfort, quiet, convenience, safety, and beauty. Practical streamlining brings a modern motor car into step with modern airspeed styling, which has real economy and efficiency.